She waited for him for 5 years. Letters, promises, tears. When Daniel went to prison for a crime he didn't commit, Naomi swore she'd stand by him. But time doesn't freeze for pain. Life kept moving, and so did she. The twist? She married his best friend. The betrayal was silent, until the truth returned louder than ever. Years later, fate doesn't just knock, it kicks down the door. Secrets unravel, love resurfaces, and redemption demands a witness. This is not a fairy tale. It's not even a tragedy. It's a raw, powerful journey of betrayal, forgiveness, and the kind of love that doesn't beg to be pretty, only real. Stay to the end, because what happens next will break you, heal you, and change the way you see loyalty forever. They were inseparable, Daniel and Naomi, high school sweethearts who built their dreams on whispered promises and late-night prayers. He wanted to be a civil engineer. She dreamed of opening a cafe. Life was hard, but they had each other. Every morning, Daniel would hold her hand and say, "I'll build you that cafe, even if I have to build it brick by brick." She believed him until one night changed everything. A wrong place, a wrong friend, a single life-altering mistake. It was supposed to be a favor, a quick ride home for a friend. But the friend was carrying a stolen firearm. When police swarmed the car and found the weapon under Daniel's seat, the silence from the real culprit was louder than the sirens. Daniel, stunned and confused, tried to explain, but it didn't matter. With no prior record but no alibi either, the court sentenced him to 6 years in state prison. Naomi cried in the courtroom, her chest hollowing with disbelief, but she vowed to wait. "I'll be here when you get out," she whispered through the glass. In the early days, Naomi visited every weekend. She brought books, laughter, and news of the world beyond prison walls. But Devon, Daniel's childhood friend, the same one who introduced him to that night, also started stopping by. He brought groceries, fixed her car, said all the right things. Slowly, grief began to look like comfort, and comfort became something dangerous. By year 3, the visits became less frequent. One letter from Daniel went unanswered for weeks. Then a message came to the prison mail. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. Devon and I were getting married." Daniel didn't cry. Not once. Instead, he trained. He read over 300 books. He taught fellow inmates math and built up a reputation as the man who never broke, but the nights were the hardest. He often stared at the wall, replaying every memory. Naomi's laugh, the dreams they built, the promises whispered under city lights. He served every day of his sentence, not for revenge, not for love, but to become something no one expected. When he walked out 6 years later, there were no cameras, no one waiting, just a man with a calm heart and a storm in his eyes. Freedom didn't feel like freedom. The world had moved on. Technology was faster. People were colder, and Daniel had no one to call. With his savings of $67 and a bus ticket provided by the state, he wandered into the city. No welcome home, no job, just rejection and stares. He slept in shelters, worked day jobs for cash, and ate from vending machines. But he never stopped grinding. Every night, he journaled 3 goals: start a business, forgive them both, and never be poor again. He didn't just want to come back. He wanted peace with purpose. It started with a conversation in a cafe, a place he couldn't afford but entered just to warm up. He helped a woman carry boxes inside, and she offered him a cup of coffee. They talked for hours. She was a retired teacher who believed in second chances. "You're not lost, you're just being rerouted," she said with a smile. That woman, Ms. Lena, offered him a tiny room above her garage and a part-time job helping at her tutoring center. It was the break he needed. And Daniel, he turned it into a doorway. Naomi's house looked perfect on Instagram. Clean white curtains, manicured lawn, matching outfits with Devon and their 3-year-old daughter. But pictures lie. The marriage was built on guilt and confusion. Devon tried to be the man Daniel was, but love built on betrayal rarely blooms. He drank more, laughed less. And Naomi? She missed the way Daniel made her feel seen, not owned. She often sat in the nursery and wondered, if I hadn't sent that letter, would we be here? Her heart ached in silence. The life she chose was not the one she wanted. Within 18 months, Daniel turned Ms. Lena's tutoring program into a citywide educational outreach. He uses engineering knowledge to build free STEM classes. Donations rolled in. Newspapers started calling him the reformed genius. And one day, a prestigious university invited him to speak about resilience. As he walked across that stage in a tailored suit, applause echoing like thunder, he didn't think of revenge. He thought of his journal, the promise he made to himself. He had become a man of value. And fate? Fate was about to knock. The event was a charity gala organized by the city's educational board. Naomi's company was one of the sponsors. She almost didn't attend, but something in her heart whispered, "Go." When she stepped into the hall, the last face she expected to see was a man behind the microphone, Daniel. His name echoed from the stage as the audience applauded his speech on forgiveness and purpose. Naomi froze. Time bent. Her fingers tightened around her clutch as her heartbeat roared in her ears. Fate had intervened, right when she thought she'd buried the past. After the speech, Naomi found herself drifting through the crowd, pretending to sip champagne while secretly watching him. Daniel noticed. Their eyes locked, just once, but it was enough. He nodded politely without emotion. That hurt more than anger. She approached, whispered, "Hi." He responded calm but distant. Naomi, the silence after that single word was heavier than years. She fumbled for words. "I'm proud of you." He smiled, small and guarded. "Took prison to become who I was always meant to be." Then he turned and walked away. The past had come knocking, but Daniel wasn't answering. Yet, that night, Naomi didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, remembering laughter behind fences, letters she never sent, and the man who walked away from her like she was a stranger. Devon noticed her distance, but he didn't know why. He had always avoided saying Daniel's name. To him, the past was a chapter sealed shut, but to Naomi it was still wide open. She looked at her wedding ring like it belonged to someone else. Guilt curled around her ribs like smoke. She whispered into the darkness, "Did I marry you or did I settle because I couldn't face myself?" Days later, Naomi walked into Daniel's learning center, unannounced. The receptionist hesitated. Daniel emerged from his office. Confident, clean-cut, no trace of the broken boy she once left. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice calm. "To help, if you'll let me," she replied. He paused, scanning her face, seeing both guilt and longing. "This place is built on second chances," he said. "But don't confuse that with second tries." Yet something in his eyes softened. He let her in, not into his heart, but into the project. They began working together. And slowly, the past began to bleed into the present. Volunteering at the center gave Naomi purpose again, but working beside Daniel unraveled her. He had changed. Stronger, kinder, but guarded. She caught him once, reading an old letter, hers, the one that started it all. "You kept that," she whispered. He tucked it away. Some things don't burn. That hallway's silence, between where they were and where they could have been, was louder than any scream. But Daniel didn't move closer. He didn't trust her heart. He trusted her guilt. And guilt is not love. Not anymore. Devon wasn't stupid. Naomi came home glowing with something he hadn't seen in years, hope. But it wasn't for him. He noticed the missed calls, the late returns, the way she mentioned the center like it was church. One night, after one too many drinks, he said, "You still love him, don't you?" Naomi didn't answer. That silence was a confession. Devon punched the wall, tears in his eyes. He was my brother, but betrayal, even unspoken, bleeds through drywall and wedding bands. Their perfect house? It was cracking, and Devon knew. He was losing her to a ghost that never died. Days turned to weeks. Daniel and Naomi built something beautiful for the community. Free workshops, teen mentorship, scholarship grants. But behind every shared laugh was a history neither dared touch. One evening, it rained heavy, and they got stuck alone, finishing up late. "You ever think about what we could have been?" Naomi asked. Daniel looked at her, not with love, but with ache. Every damn day. She reached for his hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't pull her close either. "I forgave you," he said, "but I don't know if I can trust who you are now." And that broke her more than silence ever could. It wasn't Naomi. It wasn't Daniel. It was a child at a community picnic. Devon brought their daughter to the center for the first time. The little girl ran up to Daniel, offering a flower. "Are you my mommy's friend?" she asked. He bent down, smiling softly. "I used to be." Naomi watched from afar, tears burning. Devon saw it too, the look that said, "I still love him," without saying a word. Later that night, their daughter asked, "Why did Mommy cry when he hugged me?" Neither parent answered. Because how do you explain a love buried alive that never stopped breathing? Naomi came home late again, mud on her heels, rain in her hair, and her eyes red with tears she couldn't explain. Devon was waiting. No lights, just shadows. "Did you kiss him?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Silence. Then, "No," but it wasn't convincing. Not enough. Devon's voice cracked. "I gave up everything for you. I fought your war. I raised your daughter while you mourned a man who breathed." Naomi's walls shattered. "I never asked for any of it. You chose to be his shadow, not me." And just like that, love gave way to grief. A marriage built on survival was now drowning in betrayal. At the center, Daniel sat alone with his journal, trying to drown the voices. Naomi arrived without calling, her eyes swollen. "He knows," she whispered. Daniel stood, jaw tight. "Naomi, we didn't..." But she interrupted. "It doesn't matter. The truth was always between us, even when we said nothing." Daniel looked at her for a long time before he spoke. "I loved you. I still do. But I won't be the reason your daughter watches her parents fall apart." She moved closer. "You're not the reason. I am." And for the first time, Daniel cried. Not because he lost her, but because she was finally choosing herself. That night, Naomi found the box, hidden beneath old winter coats. Every letter she wrote to Daniel, but never sent. Pages of apologies. Pages of love. Pages soaked in fear. She took them to the center the next day. "I need you to read them," she said, placing the stack in his hands. Daniel didn't speak, just nodded. Hours passed, then days, until one evening, she found an envelope at her doorstep. One page, his handwriting. I read them all, and every word told me one thing. You were broken, not heartless. I can forgive that, but only if you're ready to be whole, without guilt, without lies. Yours if you choose right. Devon called a meeting. No yelling, no blame, just truth. "I deserve better," he said, holding their daughter's drawing in one hand and a packed suitcase in the other. "If you're still chasing a ghost, then let me go." Naomi stood frozen. She looked at her daughter, then at the ring on her hand. "You were never a backup plan," she said. Devon shook his head. "But I was never your forever either." He kissed her forehead, hugged his daughter, and walked away, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. Sometimes love doesn't leave in rage. It leaves in peace when it knows it's no longer home. For the first time in years, Naomi stood alone. No Devon, no Daniel, no lies to hide behind. Just herself. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared into the mirror. The woman looking back was worn, but not broken. She picked up her phone and called her therapist, something she always avoided. "I'm ready," she said. Not for love, not for validation, but for healing. Because before she could rebuild anything with anyone, she had to rebuild the woman she abandoned the moment Daniel was taken from her. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is admit, "I ruined it, but I still deserve peace." Daniel opened the old trunk he kept hidden beneath his bed, the one no one had ever seen. Inside were years of prison journals. Thoughts, pain, hopes, rage, and letters to Naomi, letters he never sent. He flipped through the pages. "You married him. You forgot me, but I still dream of your voice." He never intended for her to read them, but healing meant truth, even the ugly kind. The next day, he handed her the journals. "You deserve to see the damage, too," he said. She wept, not for what was written, but for the man who held on to her memory through every storm behind bars. Naomi took her daughter to the cemetery, not to mourn someone who died, but to lay the past to rest. They stood in front of her mother's grave, the only person who ever warned her, "Don't let guilt shape your future." Naomi spoke aloud. "I broke promises. I loved wrong, but I'm still standing." Her daughter held her hand tightly, and Naomi knelt to whisper, "Mom, I'm ready to live, not survive." It wasn't closure. It was awakening, because sometimes the dead don't need flowers. They need you to finally listen, to stop living in a prison with no walls. Daniel and Naomi met one final time before the fundraiser event. Not at the center, not in secret. Just two people at a small corner cafe, like strangers trying again. She apologized, not to win him back, but to set him free. "You didn't deserve what I did to you." Daniel stirred his coffee slowly. Neither did Devon. Then, after a long pause, he smiled. "But I still remember how you made the worst years feel worth surviving. There was no kiss, no promise, just peace. And sometimes peace is louder than passion, especially when it's earned." The center buzzed with life. Donors, community leaders, former inmates, and their families. Naomi took the stage, heart pounding. "Tonight isn't about second chances," she said, eyes scanning the crowd. "It's about the people who never got a first one." She spoke of Daniel's story, not his prison years, but his quiet strength, his impact on young lives, his unwavering will to give back. As the room stood to applaud, Daniel remained in the back, arms crossed, eyes soft. That night, Naomi didn't speak as a victim or a lover. She spoke as a woman reborn. And for once, the applause felt deserved. As the applause faded, a familiar voice echoed from the doorway. "You've always had the power to move a room." Naomi turned Devon, clean-shaven, calm, different. He held a check. "I sold my company," he said. "Started something smaller, and I want to sponsor center." Naomi was stunned. "Why?" He smiled softly. "Because I stopped trying to be the hero in someone else's story and started writing mine." He handed her the check, then bent down to hug their daughter. "You'll always be family, even if we're not a love story anymore." That moment didn't break her. It healed her. After the event, Daniel waited by the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. Naomi walked out, still glowing from a night. "You were incredible," he said. She nodded. "You gave me the reason." They stood in silence, the kind that says everything words can't. "I got a job offer," Daniel finally said, "in Atlanta, working with ex-convicts and youth. They want me to lead." Naomi's heart dropped. "That's amazing." He looked at her closely. "Naomi, I love you, but I won't stay in a city just to be near you. if it means standing still. I need to grow. It was her turn to let go. Naomi smiled through her tears. Then go. Make them feel what I felt in that classroom. She pulled a small necklace from her pocket, the one he gave her in college. This belonged to the man who never gave up, even when I did. She placed it in his hand. Now let the world meet him. Daniel's eyes brimmed with tears. You sure? She nodded. Love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means believing you'll both be okay apart. He hugged her, tight, final, forgiving, and as he walked away, Naomi didn't feel empty. She felt whole, for the first time in years. For the first time in years, Naomi woke up to silence and smiled. There was no man beside her, no relationship status to define her worth, no looming decision, just a morning sunbeam touching her skin like a blessing. She brewed her own coffee, danced barefoot to Nina Simone, and remembered the girl she used to be, the one who believed in dreams, the one she had buried under everyone else's needs. That morning, she didn't miss Daniel. She honored him, because she knew now, sometimes loving someone deeply also means learning how to finally love yourself. What started as a fundraiser became a revolution. Naomi used the momentum to launch a reentry program for formerly incarcerated women. She named it Begin Again. Her inbox flooded. Her story, raw and imperfect, spread like wildfire, not because it was flawless, but because it was real. Women reached out, mothers, daughters, survivors. They didn't see a woman who failed. They saw one who dared to rebuild from the rubble. And slowly, Naomi realized her purpose wasn't in who she loved, but in who she lifted. She wasn't anyone's ex-wife anymore. She was a founder, a force, a light. Weeks later, a letter arrived, handwritten, in the same blocky script Naomi once memorized in prison ink. Daniel. Hero of Atlanta. The kids, the fights, the breakthroughs. I told him your story, he said. And a boy cried, not because it was sad, but because he saw hope in it. At the bottom was one sentence that broke her. We were never just a love story. We were the spark for 100 others. Naomi clutched the letter and laughed through tears. Some chapters aren't meant to be reread, but they should be remembered, not for how they ended, but for how they lit the way forward. Late one evening, as Naomi was locking up the center, a knock came at the glass door. A man stood there, tall, kind-eyed, holding a flyer. I saw this online, he said. My sister just got out. She's lost. I thought maybe this could help her. Naomi opened the door without hesitation. He wasn't Daniel. He wasn't Devon. And he didn't have to be. He was just a man who cared. She smiled. Come in. Let's talk. Because love doesn't always arrive in roses and fireworks. Sometimes it walks in quietly, offering help, and reminding you your story isn't over yet. Naomi wasn't looking for romance. But when David, the man from the center's door, invited her to dinner, she didn't hesitate. It wasn't candlelight or roses, just a quiet table by the window of a small Ethiopian restaurant. He asked about her work, her story, and never once looked at her like she was broken. She laughed, really laughed. For the first time in months, there was no pressure, no ghosts, just two people healing in each other's silence. And when he walked her home, she didn't invite him in. She didn't need to. The warmth was already there. Naomi didn't expect to wake up trending. A local journalist had covered Begin Again, but it exploded nationally. Headlines read, Ex-convict's ex-wife becomes advocate for women like her. Photos of her and Daniel. Her speech at the fundraiser. Even her past marriage to Devon were plastered across articles. The comments poured in, some inspired, others cruel. She abandoned him. She used their story for fame. But Naomi didn't flinch. She walked into the center the same way she always did. Head high, heart steady, because she knew who she was. and the world's noise couldn't rewrite her truth. That afternoon, Naomi sat in her office when a woman walked in. Tattoos, nervous hands, a stare hardened by years. "You don't remember me," she said. "Cell Block C. We used to trade poetry." Naomi's breath caught. Her name was Misha. "I saw the article," she whispered. "Thought you'd gone soft." Naomi stood, hugged her tight. "No, I just stopped bleeding for people who never healed me." They talked for hours. Misha had nothing, no home, no job. But Naomi didn't see a case file. She saw herself. And for the first time, the center didn't feel like redemption. It felt like justice. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Devon waited by Naomi's car. Not angry, not smug, just quiet. "I read the article," he said. "You told our story better than I ever could. And I'm sorry, Naomi, not for leaving, for never really seeing you." Naomi stared at him. No rage, no regrets, just a sigh. "You were scared. So was I." He nodded. "But you did something I couldn't. You turned the wreckage into something holy." She smiled gently. "And you helped me wreck it, remember?" They both laughed. Soft, sad, but finally free. Some apologies don't change the past, but they heal the scar. He came back to town quietly. No headlines, no cameras. Just Daniel, older, calmer, with a light in his eyes Naomi hadn't seen since their youth. They met on a park bench, the same one where they used to dream under city lights. No one spoke for minutes. Then he said, "I saw what you built, and I need you to know I never blamed you." Naomi's eyes filled. "You could have..." He shook his head. "You were surviving. So was I." They didn't promise to try again. They didn't have to. Their chapter was sacred, but finished. Some loves end. But that doesn't make them failures. Inside the center, Naomi unveiled a mural. The Wall of First Chances. It was covered in handprints. Former inmates, survivors, and even children of those affected. She placed Daniel's name on a gold brick in the corner, not as a tribute to pain, but to the fire that started everything. And at the center, her own handprint, the last piece. She stood back as cheers echoed, knowing now that her life was no longer a reaction to betrayal. It was a response to grace. And when people walked past that wall, they didn't just see art. They saw a woman who dared to rebuild and brought others with her. David didn't rush her. He just kept showing up when it rained, when she doubted, when she laughed unexpectedly. And one evening, as they closed up after a long day, he simply said, "If you ever feel ready, I'd like to know the whole story." Naomi turned to him, eyes softer than before. "Not all of it is pretty," she said. He smiled. "Neither is healing." She took his hand, gently, a soft yes, unspoken but understood. Not a fairy tale, not a grand return. Just two people choosing something honest, something now. Sometimes love doesn't roar back. It whispers, "I'm still here." Years later, Naomi stood at a graduation ceremony, the first class of her reentry program. Dozens of women in white dresses received certificates. Cheers filling the hall. She gave the final speech. "You are not defined by the doors that close, but by the courage to knock again. You are not your past. You are your power." And in the crowd sat Daniel, Devon, Misha, and David. Different roads. Same room. Naomi smiled, not because her story was perfect, but because she had chosen to live it out loud. In that moment, she wasn't broken. She was a beginning. Sometimes love doesn't die. It just gets buried under betrayal, time, and silence. But when truth rises, it shakes everything. Devon, Naomi, and Daniel's story wasn't about choosing sides. It was about choosing growth, healing, and forgiveness. So ask yourself, if life gave you a second chance at something you thought was lost, would you take it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw, and unforgettable love stories. Like this video if it moved you, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today.